Welcome to the Rider's Edge podcast, a platform to share conversations about the health and wellness of horse and rider. I'm your host, Farley Schweigert. Hey y'all, this is Farley with the Rider's Edge podcast. And today, let's take a little walk around your tack room. Let's do an equipment check. So I wanted to talk about your equipment and kind of go through everything and get this on your mind. You know, we're in the winter months, and for a lot of people, that is a time of not riding for our northern friends and even some of our southern ones, but it's typically a slower time, even though things don't always stop. But I think it's a great time to kind of reevaluate your equipment and do just an equipment check. I don't know if you're like me, but when I find something that works, I expect it to work. I expect it to work all the time. I have I have this thing about innate objects, mechanical things, cars, anything that's not living, breathing, feeling. I just expect it to work. Or it's easy, just fix that. It's not a big deal. What do you mean? Oh, luckily none of you have ever been on the end of that phone call. However, that's not how it works either. So we need to be mindful of our equipment. And you may be sitting there driving going, of course, Farls, that's a simple concept. It is. But just like in our horsemanship, sometimes the simplest concepts are the hardest to get. And so let's just kind of do an equipment check today. The real reason why this was brought to my attention is I've been doing some research, attending webinars, learning more about forelimb lameness, as you guys have been on my journey with Chuck. He's Chuck today, not Charles, because he was kind of naughty this weekend. But as I've been just looking at other small things that, whether that would help him get further in the process or whether I think it was a small contributing factor to what happened, I've just been looking at things through a little bit of a different lens. And I came across this webinar. It was out of the UK, and they were talking about how equipment hinders the galloping thoroughbred, or how to change equipment to not hinder the galloping thoroughbred. And one of the pieces of equipment they brought up in this webinar was the girth or cinch. And they talked a lot about these shoulder relief cinches. And you may have seen them on Facebook or Instagram, but they're scalloped back. They kind of have a little curly Q in them. So they're scalloped back to where, so the center of them is scalloped forward to where it would normally be on a straight cinch, whether it's just a straight cinch or a roper cinch. But it starts scalloping back and comes back to allow for more extension in the elbow. And when you allow for more extension back, you don't have a stop there. The horse is able to have more anatomically correct movement. And if we're having more correct movement, we're having less compensation. And if we're having less compensation, then tissue is not breaking down. So, and they have a lot of research about these girths in the racing and English world. And so I was looking around and found the shoulder relief cinch coming out of California, and I purchased one. And let me tell you what, it was a game changer on multiple horses. Chuck is still at a walk trot phase right now, but I've ridden with it on all my other horses too, and it's one of those things I didn't know what I didn't know. And these horses are more fluid up front, and they're using their front end more. And we know from correct horsemanship that if we have the front end moving, if the front feet are moving, then the hind end has to work. It's not that simple. But if our front end is moving and we're able to be more mobile with it, more fluid with it, then our hind end is stabilizing. And it just got me looking at, now I'm a big fan of natural fiber. My mom has Bird Eye Braiding, which is a 100% mohair cinch and breast collar company, and so I have probably first generation cinch and breast collar on my saddle, and I'm telling you, I love it. I love it. It's been great for me. And I pulled it off because I've had them on there for probably 5 years, 5 years or more. I think more than 5 years now. She's been doing this quite a while. And they needed washed. Then there's hair, you know, um, all in the fiber and dirt and what have you. But I pulled my cinch off, and I have two really hard spots on either side of it, and kind of right in line with the elbow. And we soaked that cinch. I mean, I'm embarrassed to tell you guys this, honestly, but it's the truth. We soaked that cinch for a week and changed out water, and we did Dawn and Woolite and all the things. And those hard spots are still in there. It's amazing. And I tell you what, it made me feel like a terrible horse owner and terrible horseman, because I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, so, and like I said, I may be the only person in the country that has this issue. I don't really think so, but at any rate, I'll be the one to start the conversation about it. And I just felt terrible. Now, did that cause Chuck's forelimb injury? Certainly not. Certainly not. Could it have been a contributing factor? Absolutely. Because if there's a hard amount of pressure there, or an off pressure, and so he starts changing his movement, and again, it goes back to, you don't know what you don't know. If that's how you've always felt him to move, then you feel like that is his normal and that is his correct. So you don't know that there's a different normal or a more correct normal. And it's gonna be a game changer. So there's not there's no affiliation with shoulder relief cinches, and they're not going to be they're a great piece of equipment. They're probably not going to be everything for everybody in every situation, but in my opinion, that's what makes it a great piece of equipment, because they need to be right for the right situation for what they're built for. And for me, I really like what's going on right now and how I feel my horse is moving and grooving. So it was a huge eye opener, guys, because my mohair cinch, I'll just be real honest. When I saddle my horses, I don't run my hands down my cinch. I unbuckle it and hang it straight, and then just go to the other side and pick it up by its buckle and run the line and go through. And maybe you do too, or maybe you are much better in OCD than apparently I am, and inspect every piece of equipment every time you saddle. Kudos if you do, and I'm working towards that. But I think a lot of us don't, and so we need to take time out of our busy lives and our hectic lives and look over everything. So look at your cinch and see if it has hard spots and if it needs washed. If you run with natural mohair products, no matter who the maker is, you can wash them in a bucket of Dawn or Tide or Woolite. We use both Woolite and Dawn for our stuff here. And don't get caught up on the natural the natural mohair, if you have a lot of horsehair that's infused with the fiber, because that's not gonna, as long as there's no hard spots in it, that's not gonna affect the performance of that material. It may be an eyesore for you. You may want it to be pristine, like when you started using it. But as far as functionality and not making horses sore, it's not an issue. So like for my breast collar that I put back on, it's older, obviously, and the color came back. We got all the dirt out of it, but it's got hair infused in it, just like it's been worked, and it has. It's been worked in hard, and it it's just been, this has just been an eye opening thing for me. So there's a little bit about um, how to take care of your mohair, and looking through cinch and maybe thinking about that. The other thing I'll say about cinches and that part of your equipment is, kind of look at your rigging, and where that D is in the saddle. And if you are in the market for a saddle, this may be something to consider, whether you're having a custom saddle built or you're buying an already made saddle. But look where the rigging is, because if it's dropped down and back, that's going to give you the same effect that cinch is going to give you, and allow for that extension to happen through the elbow. So, a good conversation to have with your saddle maker or saddle shop, about where that rigging goes. Because as we know more, as we know better, we do better. And that's what all this is about. So it's just, I've had buddies say, no, that's not what caused it. I don't ever clean my cinches. Well, it didn't cause it, but I definitely think it was a contributing factor, along with many other things that we've discussed on the podcast. Not to beat a dead horse, ha ha ha. Oh, I'm so ready for Chuck to be back to work instead of on rehab, because he was naughty this weekend. I thought I could take him to the pasture. Pardon me. And help get the sick pen up, because I've been walking him with a little bit of trotting and a lot, and I was so excited, y'all. I was so excited to take Chuck to the pasture, because I've been a little tired of doing pony rides, actually, a lot tired of it. And that joker, he got about 20 yards out there, and his head went up, and he sucked back up underneath me. He went to bucking and raring and being squirrely, and like Dale Brisby says, I ain't no cowboy. No, I didn't come off at all, but I did not cowboy through that super well. And we'll just leave it at that, because it is my story. Or at least my version of it. So I am ready for Chuck to be off of rehab detail and back to working horse and earning his keep a little bit. So back to your tack room and your equipment, as I digress per usual. Go from your cinch and check your back cinch. Check your keeper between your front cinch and your back cinch, and make sure it's in good working order. And again, you guys all know these things. We all know these things, but we take the stuff for granted, and we often forget to check the little things, because you dang sure don't want that deal busting, and then you have a rodeo on your hands. And check your back cinch. Make sure it's not, that it's still smooth and it doesn't have a lot of dirt and sweat just infiltrated into the leather there and causing issues through that area of the abdomen for the horse. And then take your saddle pads and turn them over, especially if you're using a mohair or a mohair blend, and really look through how much hair is there. If you got a lot of buildup, we have some saddle pads that really build up hair. It's like we're in there on the horse. It's kind of at the last rib area from there to the end of the pad, where we get a lot of hair built up in the saddle pads from there. And a lot of these saddle pad companies have some great products to help with that. I know Five Star has a sponge that really helps clean anything with a natural fiber. So, check your saddle pads and run them through the wash rack as well, because it's so competitive these days, and we know so many more things about how to take care of our horses and do better for them, that every little detail matters. So look through that. Take your saddle and put it on your horse without saddle pads, and just do a saddle fit. Just do a quick saddle fit. Put it normally where you throw the saddle up, and run your hand from the front concho all the way back through, and judge the evenness of there, and judge it on both sides. See how much rock you have, and just kind of reevaluate how your saddle fit's going. Now that's a very expensive piece of equipment, and you can work through some things with some padding. There's a lot of things you can't work through with padding, but just kind of do an evaluation once to twice a year, because we're finding in the saddle fit business that a horse's tone, how in shape they are, affects their saddle fit, which is a simple concept when you think about it. But gosh, we've not really talked about that in the saddle fit world, or we're just starting to. So do an evaluation there, and you may find some flaws that you go, okay, I need to go look at this, or changing the pad up for a while, especially if, come next spring, for horses that are coming back to work from being off in the winter. You may need to change your padding around for a little bit until you get them back in shape, and then go back to a different pad. A lot of subtle little things that are so simple, but I felt like it was an important thing to have a conversation about today. Another thing, while we're in the tack room checking equipment, check your reins, check your bridles, make sure all the ties or the Chicago screws are tight. Because if you're like me, again, you expect that to work. You don't expect it to dry rot to set in, or, the Chicago, if you've tightened the Chicago screw, it should stay tight. Period. End of discussion. And just doesn't work that way, unfortunately, all the time. So take a day, take a weekend, take some time to do an equipment check. As I was saying a minute ago, I feel like this is an important conversation to have, and it reminds me of it's a meme, and then it's a Facebook post, and it's been floating around the last month or so. Something to the effect of beginner riders want intermediate drills, intermediate riders want advanced drills, and expert horsemen want to work on the basics. Something to the effect. I'm definitely paraphrasing as we're having this conversation right now, but you get the point. That this is a basic conversation, but it may save a lot of heartache, and it may save some dollars by evaluating these things now and replacing what needs to replace. And it's a safety factor when it comes down to it. If we're not checking the Chicago screws and headstall and rein ties and keepers and everything, that can definitely be a safety issue. So I hope this gave you some food for thought of just going, oh yeah, that would be a good thing for me to go do. Give you some food for thought, allow you to do a kind of a mental inventory of what you need to check in your tack room. And then I just challenge you to take action on it. I challenge you to Not only say, oh, that's a good conversation, that's a good idea, but act on this conversation and go check your things, both for you and your horse. It's a matter of safety, it's a matter of health, and it's really a matter of increased or decreased performance. So, as always, thank you for hanging out with the little podcast that could. And I hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving, a safe and healthy one. And as always, I will see you down the road. Thank you for listening to Rider's Edge Podcast. For show notes and other thoughts, head over to ridersedgetherapy.com. If you would like to stay connected and continue the conversation, head over to my free Facebook group, Rider's Edge Health and Wellness for Horse and Rider. Thanks for continuing the conversation, and as always, I will see you down the road.